Okie dokie. So we might start now session 4. And basically what we are looking today, it's one very important component for any site planning design, which is standards and guidelines. I just want to make an introduction. So don't expect from this lesson that we go through the standards written in the Sphere document or UNICEF standard. This is definitely something easy to do. You can do that on your own. You are very familiar with the Sphere standard. This is also our understanding from the survey that we have launched before this training. So we will not go through them, but we will try to see the design and standards from a little bit different perspective. Of course, I have to bother you again with this consideration, which I know that I am annoying you all about the spirit, the soul of being a site planner and what is site planning. I think that it's here there is a definition what the process of the site planning, but basically we design emergency kind of communities. In, of course, in identify geographic areas which include site improvement and creation of services. I mean, site improvement is a concept to bear in mind because what you are designing, guys, is not a static entity, but it's something that will kind of evolve over the time. And as much as possible, you have to take in consideration this aspect. So the site plan and design communities, kind of new villages, new human settlement, which are not the sum of the sum of structure and shelters. It's a fairly complex task. It's in my opinion, it's a multidisciplinary task. The best site plans ever in worldwide when there was a good team doing the design. So this is very important. And for a good start, as I mentioned, the very first day, we might start from standards and guidelines. Okay. Basically, what are they? Because they are kind of different. Actually, they are very different. For example, standards are technical data considered and sometimes created by a concerned authority as an approved model. This is very important. It's an approved model. They are a basis of comparison and judgment of our work as a site planner. We cannot skip them. Of course, I'm sure you know this, but it's important to keep it in mind. While guidelines, it's a different story because it's a guide or an indication of a future technical intervention. Basically, guidelines are, and here we goes into the difference. What is the difference between standards and guidelines? Basically, standards have a juridical implication, and they can be implemented at an international, national, and sometimes a local level. The site planner must take into consideration all these levels during designing, okay? And we will mention some of them later on, but this is definitely important. You cannot ignore the standards while you're doing this job. And it's also very important to look for if there are local standards at national level, maybe which have been developed by the hosting country. This is also very, very important. Don't take in consideration just also international recognized standards. Guidelines are description of works that have proved to be effective. Normally in our job, we consider more standards than the guidelines. I suggest you to raise the consciousness over the importance to look and to search and to peruse guidelines documents. You can get many information from them. Standards for site planning. We have the UNICEF standard books. it's the handbook is not the only one related to emergency settlement, but it's definitely one of the main one. I just take the chance to see with you. Oh my gosh, not this one. Sorry, I have a problem with my screen. Here we go. Um, in your reading materials, you will find it. Okay. Okay. You will find the PDF of this one. You will find the link so you can go have a look by yourself. But just to give you an overview right here, I mean, here, the emergency, the standard emergency standards for UNHCR take in consideration all the basic, those important aspects in designing in terms of area, how many square meter per person, from a standard which is considered okay, acceptable, unacceptable, and critical range. Of course, this, I mean, can move, depends in the area where you work. As a site planner, you have the duty to ensure at least an acceptable range, but you might find yourself in the position to work below standards. But this doesn't mean that you stop working, but you have to come out with strategies to overcome this very important limit. Okay, and then we go to other kind of emergency standards over here, which is the covered living areas. I'm sure you all know all of these aspects, but at least you have the checklist, like the pilots. When the pilots, they take over an airplane, they have a checklist, and they repeat the checklist, the same checklist over the time, every time they fly. So every time you do design of a new emergency settlement, start from a checklist, and this can give you a very good insight. The camp settlement sites, fire safety is very important. Just a point on this one. Here it's stating 30 meters fire break every 300 meters. My understanding that for Idlib, the camps are pretty small. Sometimes you have camps which are less than 300 meters long, but this doesn't save you for putting in place fire safety measure. That might be fire safety points, gathering points. It's really up to you according to your design. Another element that might look kind of, if I let me say, kind of silly, because there is a gradient for the campsite that ideally is around 2-4%. I mean, again, unfortunately, we during our job we cannot choose the best land always. Sometimes land is given to us and we have to take it or leave it. So in most of the cases is the case. We had sometimes we are forced to work in contexts where the slope and the gradient is very problematic. Sometimes Andrea was mentioning an example this morning up to 30%, which you can understand how difficult it is. Then regarding to the UNHCR standards, which are kind of important over here, make you understand the module, the structure of the settlement, because the basic unit is a family plot. Then you move to the community, which is a group of families plots, might be 16, might be 8, might be 20. This is up to you, but it's important that to recognize that there is a structure. Then you move to block, which is a group of community, and then a sector, which is a cluster of blocks. Of course, it depends also the size of the camps. I don't know whether you have had the chance to design an emergency settlement for 80,000 people. I assure you, this element can be very useful during the designing of your camp, because also this will facilitate the camp management, because you have to divide your camp in sector and as such manage the camp accordingly. Then you have some other kind of important elements, for example, communal latrine distance, shower, rubbish, water, school, distribution center, feeding center, whatever you might find here pertinent with your design. So very important to refer these standards because they give you very good insight. Another, of course, the sphere standards. I'm not going to mention them over here because you all know the standards. they are requested by the cluster, so very, very important. Then there are shelter and NFI cluster related to specific operations. It's your duty to seek for them if they exist. You have to speak with your counterparts. You have to speak with the cluster. You have to speak with your concerning agency and see whether there are these kind of standards which have been which are requested. And then there are national standards. National standards can refer also to a specific policy for a certain emergency situation. So absolutely, this is all the levels that you have to look at. And then we have the guidelines for site planning, and I'm giving you some examples. Definitely one of the most important is the publication, which is called Engineering in Emergency. You have the PDF of the whole book in the reading materials in the Dropbox links. You have it, you can download it and use it for your job. This is very important publication that can give you a lot of practical and technical indication. Then another one which I like it, I particularly appreciate, which is shelterproject.org. Probably you all know it. And it's a compendium of shelters and site planning experience over the years. You might find what you're looking for your specific. You might see what others have done and other technicians and how they resolve a certain issue and troubles in the field. Another manual that I suggest you to have, it's called Neufert manual. It's really useful reference for the initial design and planning of building projects. It provides just one volume. This is important. Let me show you. Just hold on a second.
I can give the link for that.
I hope you can see. I have the paper copy. It's a pretty big volume, okay? But Andrea may put a link where you can find it online and you can use it. It's very important because containing detailed design and planning practice for plenty building projects, which is very important, very, very important. And many more. So take in consideration this one and use for your job. So what can we find in guidelines publication, for example? This is the design of an emergency settlement which was designed for the Syrian Arab Republic. It's a few years old, and I think it's definitely a very good sample that I would like to have a friendly, open chat with you, for example. So my question to you all guys, how many of you have designed camp sections in your job? How many? Have you ever done it? You can put it in the chat if you like, and Andrea can tell me whether you are responding via chat.
I can add comment for that.
Yeah, please.
I have this experience. Let's say designing the site for a new camp. Like doing the AutoCAD drawings according to the standards that are recommended from the related cluster, whether shelter cluster, CCM, and wash clusters. So yeah, I have this experience, and I'm working now on this project.
Oh, no, excellent.
Yeah, for this one. But like for the site planning, it's something actually, to be honest, new for me. That's why I had this in this weekend, just to take a look for the resources that you shared in the drive, and I'm doing a kind of draft now to design our site or our location using like Global Mapper and QGIS. But it's something new for me. That's why I'm taking a bit time to just understand more and watch the YouTube videos that you shared to just take more knowledge about this. Then I will start to like apply all what we got here to our project.
I would like to intervene in relation to the camp section and to Global Mapper. If you display your site in Global Mapper, including the digital terrain model, the section can be automatically generated, and it's very easy. You will find on the web easily tutorial for that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent. Any other comment, guys? Any thought?
Yes, I can add a comment. I was asking, I participate with my colleagues to design informal settlements, and I designed one quarantine center. It was like a settlement, like informal settlement, designed by me, and it has established now in Syria by Maran Foundation Quarantine Center, and all standards and guidelines regarding the camps was same for the quarantine center. With an addition to more specification, because it's a quarantine center, it's not just a camp or informal settlement.
Okay. Excellent. Anyone else? No, that's fine, guys. I think particularly with for the land with the important gradient, I think it's absolutely fundamental to design the camp sections. Camp sections are very important for you to design a proper drainage system. The drainage system is one of the most important infrastructure in any refugee camps. If it's done properly, if it's constructed properly, it will make a much better place to live in. And for example, if you don't have cross-section, if you don't understand the slope you are dealing with, and also we were mentioning the fact that the water, I mean, faster it goes and it might be more problematic. So you have a big slope, you have to find strategy to lower the flow of the water, even within your drainage system, if you don't want to have it ruin it in a short time. This is definitely important. But I have another question by looking at this settlement, and what can we learn from this? Is there anything that we can notice over here, and from this drawing, from this site planning? Just shoot, guys, speak up. Tell me what to have.
Giorgio, can you zoom in a little bit?
Giorgio, we lost your screen.
Yes, and
We can just hear you. You are in.
Giorgio left
Okay,
apparently.
okay.
Oh, no,
Okay.
Giorgio, share the screen again.
Yes, I will do it. Sorry, guys, I was kicked out from. Okay, sorry, guys. So the question is what do we notice? What we can learn from this site plan?
Maybe the shared facilities is in between of the two blocks. Let's say the right one and the left one.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Can you hear me now?
Pardon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, please.
So the shared facilities in the middle between the blocks.
Yeah, good point. Anything else?
I can see that the slope on the right side is going to the left side. I mean, the bottom area is the left side. This is seen bar from section DD. I have seen it well. And for the left side, the slope goes opposite wards.
Okay, no, it should be probably the same
Actually,
direction.
it should be the same, but that's why I ask you to zoom in a little bit.
Okay, sorry, guys. Honestly, to be honest, I try to zoom in, but I don't know how to do that, to be honest. This is the, is it better now? Is it? Can you see?
Yeah.
Or it's the same?
I think if we download the presentation and see directly.
Yeah, don't worry. You can download the presentation,
Yeah.
so you can have a look at it better. Yeah, definitely. But definitely for sure, this settlement has been designed according to the contour lines, or at least, I mean, to work in synergy with them rather than against them. And then we go back to the issue to have a proper survey, which is absolutely important.
I just wanted to ask you, I see the roads have a high slope. That's right or not?
Some of them, they might have it, yes. Not that much, I presume. But that definitely is a good point to take into consideration. Since we are a little bit running out of time, I just go a little bit ahead, I carry on. For example, here, what you can definitely look at is the mesh, the structure. I mean, the frame of this settlement, which is kind of interesting because it's basically following the contour lines and try to harmonize the shape of the settlement with the main characteristic of this plot, which is the gradient. And another point which for me is particularly interesting for this settlement is main roads and minor roads. So the roads are not the same, okay? And we will come back to this one in the later slides. So instead of having a settlement with the same width of road, you might think the point whether to have main roads and kind of minor roads, which are more for pedestrians, for example, and to make the living condition of the camp better. Because if you minimize the access of heavy vehicles to your settlement, it's definitely a benefit. And this one, the position of the communal facilities, like one of us just said, very important, which is centralized. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to centralize all the communal facilities, not at all. But this was a kind of must, considering that the shape of the layout of the land is not a rectangle. You see, it's very narrow here. It's a wide on the two sides of the settlement. So it was kind of natural choice to choose the middle over here for the facilities, for the communal facilities. Another element over here that there are green areas in each cluster of family plots. Probably they could afford to do it, but it's a kind of interesting that the people access to their cluster plot, family cluster plots, by passing through kind of green areas. I think this is a kind of psychological big improvement for the settlement itself. You have any comment, guys? I carry on. This is another element that you might find in guidelines. This is particular here. It's in the Neufert manual, which is kind of important. For example, the question is, how do you calculate the width of the camp's internal road? I mean, there is no just one answer, okay? Because as I was previously mentioning, you might have main road and minor roads. But this is important. So and then I would like to provoke you, do we need internal roads? For what? It's an open question with a very easy answer, but just go for it. Why do we need internal roads?
Yeah, for sure. For example, when the IDPs want to like transport any items or any goods to their shelter, so it should be like internal roads, of course.
Okay. Any other? Khaled, go ahead. You raise your hands.
I think for ambulance, for example.
Absolutely, yes.
This is for, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
It's also for door-to-door distributions, water trucking distributions.
Absolutely.
Any other services that the contractor or the staff need to get between tents?
Absolutely. Yes, of course.
And maybe like, especially if there's kind of friendly spaces, either for children or for women, so they don't have to, for example, get through the tents or through the, this area. They have just go to the, I don't know, like some minor roads to get these spaces.
Yeah, I agree with you all guys. There is Nizar entering the waiting room.
Invited.
Okay, cool. Okay, no, all of these are excellent, good points. Of course, we do need internal roads in any emergency settlements, but this doesn't mean that we have to design the road just as one road with one characteristic, one typology. We might need we might need specific roads because we have to carry out the sludging, but we might need a road to enable the safe movement of pedestrians. So when we calculate the road, the dimension of this road, which is important, we have to think what is moving on this road over here. But we will come back also to this point over here.
Ahmad Al-Shabi says maybe for emergency situation we need the road in the chat.
Yeah, precisely. For example, since one of the biggest hazard and in any emergency settlements is fire. You need gathering points in case there is a massive fire where the people can run and find a safe location. Okay, this is important, and of course you need this kind of communication. Maybe the road also to extinguish, to give access to the fire safety after the fire department if there is one around. We had cases of the fire department entering the IDP camps in Iraq because of the fire. So it's definitely a big issue. But again, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to treat all the internal roads in the same way. Also think in perspective that one day, the camp might consolidate. And then you might leave a little bit of space for putting a row of trees, which can be helpful both in winter and in summer. So just think about it. For example, this is another indication that you might find in a certain book here, for example, the Neufert. Okay, the point is this one: which kind of vehicles are entering our, and the purpose for what? I mean, we might have vehicles for the sludging. We might have vehicles for the water tracking. So think carefully how we dimension the road is important, and we can get the indication, for example, from this kind of documents, so that we dimension the road accordingly. It's just not a chaotic calculation or we copy and paste what we are used to do, but think carefully. In this, we have indication about, I mean, certain kind of vehicles, the space they need to turn. If we have to provide materials for a centralized warehouse, for example, I mean, all these things can be taken in consideration. So, in fact, you ever design water tracking or the sludging path? So when you have your site plan ready, think how a sludging track is entering the site. I mean, doing his task and then going out, as well as for the water tracking. Water tracking and the sludging trucks are very heavy. They ruin quite a lot the roads, particularly the unpaved roads. So that's why you have to think kind of holistically when you design your settlement. This is another kind of guideline that you might find useful, for example. And how do we dimension open areas, for example, or certain type of areas? For example, in the Neufert, you might find the space that people need when they are queuing, waiting for something, when they are moving, when they are carrying belonging and stuff. You might take in consideration disabled necessities, okay? When you design an open area in your camp, how many people can accommodate this area? Is it big enough to accommodate all the inhabitants of your settlement? There is the need to do it, or you can do it smaller. So how do you make all this calculation? You cannot invent, we cannot invent. unless we have a specific experience on that. So we have to refer to this kind of documents. Here in the guidelines, you might find, for example, this is the scheme for, how do you say in English, a kindergarten. This is
Child-friendly space.
yeah, and this is for the child-friendly space over here. So basically, sorry, I go back 1 second. For here, I have a basic indication that the kind of typology of the structure where you have the space for cooking, you have the space for the activity, you have the space for water and sanitation, you have the space for different purpose. But within these documents, you might find the indication that you're looking for to dimension properly the area that you are going to dedicate for a specific task. And this is a child-friendly space, for example. Parenthesis. I strongly believe that the entire camp, the entire emergency settlement should be a child-friendly space. I mean, there is nothing more said that to see fencing of a child-friendly space, fencing of the settlement itself. Maybe it's done for security reasons, to protect the staff so no one ruin them, to make them lasting longer. Fine, that's enough. But in the other hand, try to think of the space holistically. Like it has to be in a child-friendly space. Most of the inhabitants are children. Okay.
May I intervene?
Yeah,
If you
please.
have to design a child-friendly space, but it can be also a school or whatever. It is also very important to contact your colleagues who are responsible for these activities, because they might have special needs, they might have special ideas, and if they don't have idea, you propose your idea, then you see you can elaborate. So at the very end, when you have your product on the field, everyone is happy. You are happy, and your child-friendly, responsible people are happy, and the children are at the end, of course.
Yep. Any comment, guys, so far? Anything you would like to tell me? Nope. I think everything absolutely fine. So basically, the guidelines show a proven knowledge that should not be wasted. For example, this is something that, how many of you knows engineering in emergency?
Yes, I use it.
Okay. Anyone else? No. My understanding that just one of you is using this manual, correct? I think so. But for example, okay, it's a very important one. You have it, as I said. For example, here there are some explanatory which are very clear. For example, for the designing of internal roads, this is the basic. You might see the culvert. You might see here the natural water course, streams, catch water drain. Very, very important to protect your internal roads, particularly when there is a slope. The side ditch, all elements which are very, very important that you have to take in consideration. Erosion, for example. Erosion is a big issue in every emergency settlement, even if the land is flat. Because you have erosion of the internal drainage system, of the drainage network, and you might put in place some erosion checks. And this manual show you how to do that. Very, very important, guys. Very, very important. This is just an element which I have taken from engineering emergency, which is kind of nice because it gives you an insight that there are people that over the years have thought deeply on specific issues. For example, here is a consideration for internal roads for emergency settlements. Basically saying that here, half roads are good for less than 50 vehicles per day. Fine, okay. Gravel roads up to 200 vehicles per day. I hope that we will never reach such a degree of internal vehicle in any emergency settlement. But then there are some comments about improved tracks, intermittent light traffic, improved trackers suitable where an engineered road is not absolutely necessary or at the first stage in the improvement of the chest. So this is to say that access. This is to say that even as an element which we give it for granted, like internal roads, it's important because, for example, in the way you design put in place certain design option, you have consequences on maintenance or cost. Or, for example, camp management. You might say this road is just for water trucking, nothing else. Because it has been done, has been realized, so the trucks can go inside, use it without spoiling and destroying the other roads. So water trucks are not allowed to go outside this road. This affects camp management. Then just a little bit to conclude, over here, just this is coming from another manual, which is kind of important. Is the study on community layouting. Basically, how to integrate and dimension and to relate public spaces and road are ultimately public spaces with semi-private spaces. Can they be included? And family plots. For example, if you look at it's the same dimension. If you look at the drawing here on top, you have something that it might look like an emergency settlement. Okay, this is a scheme. Okay, keep in mind, it's not a design. It's a scheme to be able to make a thinking out of it. Okay, so over here you have a concentration of family plots, but you have the same dimension of roads. Okay, just to quote an example. Here, within the same space, probably I might be able to accommodate more family plots because I put an additional element in my designing, which is semi-private spaces, which might be different kind of roads, semi-private internal roads, which can fulfill a task without taking away too much spaces. That's why the size and the shape of the plot, I mean, exert a strong influence on what we can build on it. This is also giving an insight what is going to happen for the future of the camps, which is a stronger element to be taken to take into consideration while you design an emergency settlement. What is going to happen? You have to make a kind of scenario planning, but we will talk about that when you do your design. So basically, this is to say that having good guidelines will not spare us as a site planner from the responsibility to be careful in designing any emergency settlement. So that definitely important. So guys, you have to understand that design of emergency settlement is really a holistic approach. Better if you do it in team. That's much better than alone. Alone, probably with difficulties, you might be able to touch all the aspects of this emergency community. So I think I have spoken too much and you have spoken too few. So I hope you are still awake and I hope you have some questions and comments to tell me.
Maybe I can just add on your presentation what you were saying at the very end. Don't work alone. Consider all your colleagues, all the unit that you have in your office, a WASH unit, the education unit, health unit, and everything what you propose, you have to discuss it with your colleagues, because always more brains give better ideas. And you might have to adapt your ideas according to the need, based on the knowledge of the professional, let's say the health people or educational people.
I suggest to take a break now for 10 minutes, 8 minutes. We come back here at your 3 o'clock. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. You're welcome, guys. Meet, there is a new guy. Okay, I think we are fine. Andrea, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Giorgio, I'm not going to speak about WASH and standard, but I'm going to speak mainly about the relation between a site planner and a WASH officer. And with my presentation, I want to achieve that you will understand that a site planner without a WASH officer cannot work properly, and a WASH officer without a site planner as well cannot work properly. It's a cooperation between the two. Now I've shared my screen. Please let me know if it's fine or not. You can see it? Apparently, yes, you can. How is it? It's fine?
Yes, it's fine.
It's fine, okay.
It's a little bit small, Andrea.
Small. Yeah.
Small. Why is small?
It's not, it's...
Maybe, no, annulla. Now how can I go back?
You can open your presentation.
Okay, now maybe
now it's better.
Now it's better. Or maybe what I can do, no, okay, keep it like that. That's fine like that. Eh? Okay, fine. I go. So, like Giorgio was explaining this morning, there are guidelines, there are standards, there are books, there are tutorials. Actually, there are many books and information available for site planning generally, but for WASH even more. As Giorgio was saying, we put the most important on the Padlet. You might find as well a WASH folder with the most important one. But in my opinion, as soon as you need something, you just browse in internet and you will find it. Also because I'm pretty sure when you need the information about some WASH problem, for sure you don't have anymore the link of this Padlet and you will not find it. But just go to the internet and you will find it. But like Giorgio was saying, the most important one are the WASH, the sphere and standard indicator, UNICEF standards and indicator. And of course, the country WASH strategies. In Syria, there is one strategy, you can see the picture on the screen, called WASH Emergency Response Guideline. You have the main parameters as a WASH person. This strategy is still actual, it's still active and present, and has been developed by our WASH partners, and this is very useful. So what I want to tell you, the general standard and guidelines that you find online are for all the world, while the country-related strategies and standards are somehow better to use, because they consider the reality on the field in your area of operation. As a WASH expert, as a WASH engineer, you need to consider several sectors. Here I just listed the principal one is the water supply, which starts from the identification of the water source, identification of the water quality, treatment, water transport, water supply, water distribution, and water evacuation. You have sanitation, type of latrine, type of users, what to do with sludge, fecal sludge, how to transport fecal sludge, how to treat fecal sludge. Then you have solid waste management, starting from the type of waste that you are producing, the amount of waste that you are producing, and what to do with the waste, how to dispose this waste. Hygiene promotion, starting from an assessment, where are the main problems, how to address the main problem, and finally you have vector control, drainage, and flooding. Sometimes drainage and flooding is not considered a WASH problem, more a construction problem. To be honest, I don't care so much, also because in most of the NGOs, a WASH expert is at the same, the construction expert is actually the only engineer related to this very field. So the construction will, as a guy will, sometimes will have to deal with drainage, sometimes the WASH expert. But now we are not WASH expert. This is not a WASH presentation. It is a presentation for site planner. And the big question is, what needs a site planner to consider in the field of wash, and move it, and it is exactly the same. All the previous sector, water supply, sanitation, hygiene promotion, drainage, vector control, and flooding are elements that a site planner needs to consider as well. And now, with order, we will go see topic by topic why and how a site planner needs to consider this wash element. First of all, water quantity. An IDP camp or a refugee camp need a certain amount of water based on the number of people. But finally, who gives the quantity of people that can host the site? That's the site planner. The site planner is the person who can determine how many people can host the site. We know that based on the Syrian wash strategy, we have to calculate around 25 liters per person and day. So we know the number of people, and this number of people is a value given by the site planner. Additionally, the site planner will have to make an overview map of the site. It is, yes, in Syria, but close to this on the other city. So at the same time, he will probably identify the location of the raw water, of the water that has to be transported. In some cases, the water can be found in the site itself, but in most of the cases, especially at the beginning, water has to be water trucked from somewhere. But from where has to be water trucked? Maybe there is a city close by that they have a good water system, and trucks can collect the water from the city close by. How many kilometers is the city far away? How long will take a truck to travel from the city to the camp? These distances are elements that a site planner has to give to the wash guy, because the wash guy, in most of the cases, is not able to produce a map and to identify the exact distance and the exact route that the truck has to take. Then also, wash guy is interested in the quality of the water. And the quality of the water can be influenced based on the possible contamination. If the sources are somehow on a borehole, on agricultural land, the wash guy needs to be carefully and to check the water about in relation to agricultural polluant. Or if the sources are close to a mine, the wash guy needs to check also the water in relation to polluant related to mine works. And the information, if there is a mine close by, or the information, if there is agricultural land in the close by, need to come from a site planner. And then additionally, okay, now let's assume we have managed to bring our water into the IDP camp. Are you sure that the local population, that the host community close by, do not want to have access to this water? Let's see how the village around are supplied with water. Maybe they don't have good water. And as soon as you bring good water into the camp, they are coming to collect it. Be carefully, because this may cause trouble and friction between the host community and the IDP camp. So an assessment in terms of water supply must be also carried out around the site and not only in the site. And then finally, the wash guy will also needs to know where he will put his water points, where he will put the container, the water storages. And that's again the site planner that needs to give to the wash guy a proper map with the community, the layout of the community, and it has to be very clear for the wash guy how many households has a community, so that he can determine how much water they need per community and what type of container they need for this community. Just in relation container, when I was in Gaziantep a few months ago, people told me that water trucking is not an issue. In Syria, everyone is doing water trucking. Maybe I'm personally against water trucking because it's not sustainable and very expensive. But even that, in water trucking, you have to be very carefully, because water trucking can be organized properly and also very bad. You see in the picture on the right side, a bad organized water trucking. This truck will need probably more than 1 hour to fill all these recipients. And here again comes the site planner in the game. The site planner needs to identify the location for the tank, for the main storage, but he needs to tell to the wash guy how many people are living in this community, and then the wash guy will be able to decide what type of storage you need. Let's take the example that I was writing on the right side. If you put a container, a drum of 200 liters, and the community has 8 households, the drum needs to be filled 6 times a day. And this means a lot of trips, a lot of consumption of the road, or the destruction of the road, and probably you need many, many trucks to do this type of work. But if you put a bigger container, let's say 1,000 liters, 1 cubic meter, the trucks needs to fill it only once. And additionally, the location of the main tanks or the drums have to be properly identified, because the trucks need to be close by. And if it is not too close, you will lose more time in laying out the pipe, but additionally, the truck might need a pump. Who knows what type of pump do they have? Do they have a pump? And additionally, also, it's important for a wash guy to know how much water they need, what type of container, because this might, at the end of the day, determine what type of truck do they need. They need 5 cubic meter truck, a small one like in the picture, or a big one, 12 cubic meter truck, water truck. If it's a small one, road can be narrow, curves can be more straight, not more close. But if you have a big trailer of 12 cubic meter, you need big roads. And this also influence a lot your layout on your camp. That's why a close discussion with the wash guy is very important, because all this has to be identified previously to the design of the site. We can continue. Additionally, it's important for the wash guy to know if the close by city has a water supply system. Maybe in future, and hopefully in future, you can connect your IDP site to the pipe network. If you do that, what do you need? Again, you need maps, and maps of good quality, with elevation, with contour line, because the wash guy might go to the water authority or to the responsible people of the water supply of the city, and he may propose a solution how to connect his site to the existing network. The water authority might be interested because they can sell more water, might not, but anyway, you need a map to make a proposal. And at the very end, you also need, as a site planner, to consider the drainage of your water point. I have seen many cases where drainage was not considered. At the end, you have spillover of the tap stand or whatever it is, which will become a pond, which in the summertime, it will be a breeding place for mosquito. Probably in Syria, you don't have malaria, but in many other countries, you might find malaria. But anyway, it's not healthy to have ponds of dirty water around the water points. This is actually what I wanted to say about the water supply, but it's not only that, we have also the sanitation. Sanitation is not only latrines and finish. As a site planner, you have to inform the wash expert about soil type. If it's a big difference if you have sandy soil, rocky soil, or black cotton soil in terms of latrine construction. A good wash guy will have any way to investigate himself, but you can give, and you should give as a site planner on the report, the type of soil, so that so that everyone is aware about the situation. Climate also can be an issue. Sorry?
For the type of soil, what kind of degree shall we give information? For example, rocky land and sandy land, or for more details?
Maybe I cannot hear you. Maybe can you be a little bit louder, or maybe can you?
Okay, 1 minute. Is it okay now?
Now it's fine.
Yes. For the soil type, for which degree of detail shall we give him? For example, rocky land and sandy land, enough, or we shall give more details?
It's if you assess a site, it's very important that you say on your report it's rocky land, big stone, sandy, or black cotton soil, clay, because this influences a lot in the selection of the type of the latrine. If it is sandy land, and if the wash people plans to have pit latrine might collapse easily because sand is loose and will not host it. If it is clay land or black cotton soil, there will be no infiltration in the so it means latrine are going to be filled very quick. If it's rocky land, you might not be able to dig. So if it's totally rocky land, like in many areas in Ethiopia where I was working, you might not choose this land because there is no way to do a pit latrine. And without latrine or without sanitation, you cannot plan a camp. So that's why you have to investigate about the soil type. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Another issue that a site planner should take in consideration is the water table. Water table can be a pain if it's too high in terms of sanitation, because you cannot dig a latrine on the water table. You are going to contaminate the water table. And usually, if water table is high, the tendency is here to have a shallow well or hand dug well. So contamination of the water table in this case is something to avoid. And in relation to water, to groundwater, it's also important to have an idea about groundwater flow, which direction flows the groundwater, so that you might consider where to put your latrine in relation to the water point. Then slope, again, now we know how to make a slope, how to identify the slope through global mapper, that's a good thing. But too steepy area are not good for latrine, because then you need to protect latrine against erosion and the general structural problem. And another issue is that important to look around outside of the site, what type of local material is available. If you are in Africa, you might have a lot of wood, a lot of leaves, but in Syria, probably not. Maybe stones, maybe you have to have a look at the local market. And something that about the local material should also be included on your report as a site planner. And okay, and then next, for any type of sanitation on excreta disposal, you have to allocate the space for the latrine itself, and you need the design for that. The wash expert will deliver the design of the latrine of the toilet with septic tank, without septic tank. This is not on you to decide, but the wash experts should decide. But you need to consider the space, and also you need to consider that there might be people with disability with a different design. How frequent you need to consider this in every community, every tree community. These are decisions that you have to take into consideration and discuss eventually with other people. And then at the very end, also, you have to consider that the latrine, if you do latrine, needs to be dislodged from time to time. And to dislodge latrine, you need to have access with a dislodging truck. Do you have access to dislodging truck? Dislodging trucks in comparison with the water supply trucks must go closer to the latrine. So somehow you need to have access to the latrine with the truck. And then at the very end, it's not enough to say for a wash guy, okay, we can dislodge it, but what to do with dislodge? What to do with the fecal sludge? Do you have a place to dispose the fecal sludge? If no, it's not a solution. You need to identify a place, and the site planner should somehow be able to localize those areas on one map. What else? Yeah, that's all about sanitation. So everything what is related to sanitation need to be somehow in a map. And that's why I forgot to say before, we speak with the thematic maps. We can have a wash map, a water supply map, a sanitation map, whatever, but thematic maps are very interesting and very useful. And GIS is a special, very good software for thematic maps because you can make automatic analysis. For example, distance from a latrine to the shelter, or from water supply to the shelters. Another element that a site planner should consider together with the WASH expert is the solid waste management. Of course, we know how many people the site planner inform, how many people will host this very site, so we know how much garbage is going to be produced. And finally, we need to know how this garbage is going to be collected. It's not on you to decide if it is centralized or not centralized, but whatever solution the WASH expert will find, you will have to find the space for your drum, for your bins, for each household, for each community. And then, of course, how these bins is going to be emptied. Manually, with the tractor. If it's manually, you need maybe a small current. If it's a tractor, you need a road to go there. And if it's a tractor with a trailer, a bigger road. And these are, again, elements to be considered on your layout when you make the roads. And then what to do with this garbage? We are going to put it in an on-site burial. We are going to put it outside. We are going to link our garbage with the municipality garbage. All these questions need to be answered, and the site planner, again, will have to be involved, because if it's collected together with the city garbage, then the city management will have to find a solution. But if it's independent from the city garbage, the site planner should have the capacity to identify a place for centralized garbage burial. Then special in the garbage, you might have a special area like a market that produce a lot of garbage. Again, the market place has to be identified by a site planner, and garbage location as well must be identified by the site planner. Space must be identified on a map. Maybe something I forgot. If you collect the garbage from bins, you need people to do that. You need tools to do that. And you need a tractor eventually to do that. And these tools, this tractor need to be parked somewhere. A site planner might have to identify an area where all these tools can be stored in a sure manner. And at the very end, also not to forget the wind. If the wash guy decided to burn the garbage, what is done in many cases, be clear that the site is not going to be in the bad wind location, because living all the time in under the smoke of a garbage is not a pleasure. Then hydrogen promotion. Hydrogen promotion maybe need less intervention by a site planner, but yes, still a lot, because a good hydrogen promotion program need a good map of the site. It means what Giorgio was saying this morning, the sites needs to have clear households with household number, clear community with clear number, clear blocks, so that the hydrogen promoter will have clear information where to be active, in which area they can be active, they can split the groups, and the groups, they will receive clear address where to be efficient. Additionally, if they have a good social structure, if there are problems with let's say with health or with general hygiene, this can be easily identified, reported on a map, and then the hygiene promoter can focus on this very area where they have the problem based on the map. So maps are also an essential tool for hygiene promotion. As well, okay, I can continue for the next one. And then to continue about drainage and flooding. It's very important that the site planner gives information about soil type, because this change will have big influence on the surface water, vegetation cover. Again, this will influence a lot of the surface water. Rainfall. Do we expect heavy rain? We don't expect heavy rain. Slope. You know that the slope influences the speed of the surface water, and speed of the surface water influences the erosion potential. All this information needs to be collected by the site planner and transmitted to the WASH expert, who eventually, together with the site planning will make slope analysis, flooding analysis, and drainage. Of course, for a drainage, you need a good map, but not only a precise map with a precise elevation model. We have seen last week how we can make drainage or simulate drainage with the global mapper. Then, also important to see type of soil. I said already, because different type of soil might absorb water or not absorb water. This might be a big difference on the drainage. And yes, once you have all this information, you share this information with the WASH expert, and then together you start to develop the drainage plan together with the roads. And then also you can realize, or you can simulate if the area is going to be flooded or not. We are going this week to show how to make flooding analysis, again through global mapper, because this apparently is a recurrent problem also in Syria. Next one. Here, for example, just a map of flooding analysis in Erbil. We wanted to simulate it, the flooding of the river Tigris probably, and see if our planned camp would be in danger or not, and obviously part of the camp will be in danger. And this type of map are very important, especially for the authority, to show that the given land is not adequate for refugees or for IDPs. But about this type of map, we are coming next week or this week.
Andrea, sorry, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Yes.
Just an important clarification. This is a flooding simulation which I have done when I was working in Erbil. This is not a UNHCR camp. This was a camp made by the authority, by the Iraqi authorities, but they unfortunately placed some of the communities on an area that we consider to be flood-prone areas, and so we carried out this simulation for them. But this is not an UNHCR emergency settlement. As you can see, it's pretty packed, so, and very, very military style. This is it. Thank you.
Okay. And even flooding, you have two types of flooding to consider. Like in this case, the flooding is caused by the river, and then to avoid this type of flooding is very, very difficult and extremely costly. And then you have another type of flooding which is poorly caused by rainwater, and this can be corrected with nice drainages. And also maybe to add that you might find in internet a lot of information of history of flooding. You have the UNITAR, for example, online maps, but also Sentinel. It's also a portal, and if we have time, we are going to see also Sentinel, where you can find the water index over the time. And flooding can be, if you don't know how to make the flooding analysis on your computer, you can find information on historical flooding on the internet. And then also, yeah?
Andrea, sorry for interrupting. Can I add something on this? I mean, this is my personal experience. I mean, normally, if you work for kind of big organization that have a maybe GIS department, or they are in contact with other UN agency. This, for example, in this specific case, this river is an affluent of the Tigray River, and very close to its path, we were designing emergency settlement. So there are some agencies that basically develop this kind of maps, even from an historical perspective. So you can go back up to sometimes 10 years and more to see what happened in terms of flooding. So you have a kind of a real reference to look at. To be honest, I'm not sure whether those are kind of available in internet. Sometimes those kind of information, you can get them, but they have a cost. And so you might ask to, I don't know whether that's the case for the operation with the cluster in Gaziantep, but that you might ask to the cluster if it's necessary for your work to get this kind of maps through other organizations like UNITAR or others, or UNHCR or whatsoever. Maybe you can ask for it. Okay, over.
Yes, you are right. Sometimes it's very difficult to get this information, and sometimes they are free online, like Sentinel. They are constantly taking picture of the world, and with several different cameras. Some of them just take the water index or the humidity, let's say it, and this over the time, and then you can choose your period, and then you can really see the flooding over the time, and this can be then taken into your map. Again, for all this type of mapping, GIS is the right approach and not really CAD mapping. And then the other picture here is to show that you might have a very complicated drainage, but also very simple drainage. And in my experience, more simple you plan, better it is, cheaper and easier to maintain. And here, for example, there is another solution. This is a typical place where flooding is not caused by the river, but just by rainy water. So that's why all the area meant for shelter have been raised, so that when you have your 10 centimeters of water, the shelter are going to be dry. Maybe, Giorgio, you might add something. That's your project.
Yeah, of course, all these kind of solutions, they have cost implication. This is very much related with the kind of resources that you have and means, for example. Fortunately, in that area, we could count on a pretty cheap supply of concrete, sand, and cement. And considering the resources we had at the time, we could afford literally to create safe spaces for all the family plots. And here, particularly, the family plot is surrounded by a concrete beam. So in a way to keep the family plot as protected as possible. Over.
But again, this is a good solution, costly, but for the emergency, probably is not an option, because in the emergency, you might have 2 days to settle up your camp. And in 2 days, you are not going to do such an intervention. And then finally, also as a site planner, you have to consider that you have many other sectors that need WASH. You have education. With the education people, you will determine how many classrooms you need, how many children you need, how much playground do you need for your mapping purpose. And this also will give you the number of facilities in terms of latrine and in terms of water that you need. And this as well needs space and the dislodging, like usually. Eventually, with education people, you can determine how many disabled children do you have to count on your facility, together with the WASH guy. The WASH guy will tell you, I need so many latrines, and you will have to find the space for those latrines. Health is the same. Locally, maybe not, I don't know, but apparently in Syria, we do not have to plan for health facilities in the IDP site, because as far as I remember, there is a mobile health unit. But even for that, you need a space, because they are coming with their lorry or with their Land Cruiser, and they have to park somewhere. They have to put a tent somewhere. You need space for that, and it has to be very clear for the health people where to go, and it has to be very clear for the hygiene promoter and for the camp management where to expect the health people, because those people have to inform the IDPs to be present when the health people are there. So this location has to be identified prior to the construction of the site. The same is for the relief people. Relief people need a lot of space. They are coming with big trucks. It means big roads. They have offloading. They are distributing. It means facilities, wash. It means water. Those all have to be identified, discussed, and finally mapped on your plan. Psychosocial. I just write psychosocial, but with that I mean woman-friendly space, girl-friendly space, you name it. There are many activities in the psychosocial sector, and every activity needs a spot, needs a place. Sometimes you have child-friendly space together with woman space, sometimes not. Whatever is the solution, you don't have to find the solution. You have to ask the expert, what do you have, what do you need, and then you will see where to put these requested facilities. If they ask you to put 2 tents, you need space for 2 tents, you need playground for 2 child-friendly space, and as a WASH guy, you need facilities, water, and sanitation for 2 child-friendly space. Again, everything has to be properly mapped on your paper in advance. And probably that's the last slide. I was quick this time, but that's good. So now if you have any question, any thoughts, please, that's the moment. If I think it was rather obvious what I was saying, but very often you see WASH people that do not consider site planning, and site planner that they don't consider the WASH experts. And luckily, I know that many of you have the task as a WASH and site planner and the construction. So for this, in this case, it's easy because everything is in one head. If you don't have any question or any thoughts, I give the words back to Giorgio.
Can you hear me, guys? Andrea, perhaps you can stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, I do.
So I see you all. All okay, guys?
Yes, everything is okay.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Probably we are finishing a little bit earlier today, which is good for all of us. I hope you were not sleeping too much during the presentations, our presentations. And we are kind of, as I said previously,